how do you feel about Karl Marx's criticisms of capitalism? Because some of them are pretty valid, I would say, but I don't necessarily think his ways of going about them are the ways I would like to see them carried out.
I think a lot of his criticism isn't with capitalism, but with, say, consumerism or kind of bourgeois society. I don't think capitalism on a fundamental level is just voluntary exchange. Capitalism is just a system in which, so I think the complaint with capitalism is based on greed, that it causes humans to be greedy. And I think this is the difference is humans are greedy. Humans are greedy under capitalism. Humans are greedy under communism. Humans are greedy under socialism. The question is, what does it look like when people want to carry out their greed? And people carrying out their greed under socialism looks like corruption, because you can't advance through any other means than through the state. So it's either be by having a brother who's in control, or paying people off, or doing kind of nefarious means. Under capitalism, your greed looks like, okay, how do I serve myself? How do I serve, well, you get people to volunteer money and give it to you. So it's a system in which it uses greed to drive a better society, because in order to receive, you first must give in a capitalist society. It's a system in which people make the world better while driving their own self-interests. And so I think using a system that aligns self-interest instead of pretending like people's morals change based on the system that they're within, I think is a better, wiser thing to do. And I think even like your complaints like healthcare, like, kind of these big corporations, they're not typically a result of free market capitalism. They're usually a result of cronyism or kind of large government policy. They use the force of law, either through lobbying, having people in charge of these regulatory forms, to push kind of protectionist laws. So what we call capitalism and the problems of capitalism, I think is usually derived from government and people kind of pursuing their own self-interest. One of the things in the law was that he put forth, there are kind of three views of government. There's a system in which the few plunder the many, and that's oligarchy, and kind of what people call the United States. There's a system in which everybody plunders from everybody. That's the worst of the three systems. That's socialism and communism. And then there's the system that I hope that we can get to, is a system in which nobody plunders from anybody. It should be nothing but voluntary exchange. I don't see how you can call exploitation when it's voluntary, and there's, would become many different avenues to kind of have your contracts and negotiations set up.
I think that's a wise distinction that you made, man. I think it's, in concept, I'm with you. I guess my next question is then, where do you see the role of like campaign donations being seen as free speech, and how that plays into, so say for instance, I'm able to give a certain amount of dollars that's not going to compare anything to what a corporation could give. So do we still have the same amount of free speech in that case? And how do you think that plays into, this cronyism and things like that you see going on?
Corporations are still people. It's just another mechanism in which people operate. So for that reason, I think corporations have free speech. But I think the problem isn't so much that they lobby government. It's just that government has so much power. If we limited the power of government, then there wouldn't be this kind of this want by corporations to have lobbies. If they knew that it was meaningless, that there's no power there, then there's not a need for corruption. It's meaningless corruption. So I think when we centralize power, then we incentivize corruption, and that's why so much money is thrown into politics. Everybody wants to use the force of law to benefit themselves and to hurt competition. It's one of the reasons why a lot of like big corporations are the ones that push for regulation.
Right,
they know that they're big enough and they can afford to pay for it, and they know that their competition isn't built in the same way that they are. Or they want the corporate tax rate to be as high as possible. I mean, up until recently, it was 35%. That was the highest in the developed world. And a lot of corporations were fine with that because they weren't paying 35%. They were going overseas and having subsidiaries that they gave money to. And so it affected the competition, the ones that didn't have the means to organize themselves in a same manner. And so I think if you decentralize power, you de-incentivize corruption.
Dude, that's yeah. I think that's a great point.